grew up in a Cuban household. My mom was Cuban, dad was American. But even though my last name was Hunt, my dad lived in Miami, spoke a little bit of Spanish before my mom, but got real into the Spanish, as you can imagine, once they became official. And my dad's the type of guy who can like dance salsa, merengue, speaks fluent Spanish, the whole thing. So even growing up, I heard Spanish all the time, and music-wise, they were huge into Spanish music and stuff. And so, I mean, I've never not identified as a Cuban. It wasn't a natural like step into the cigar world because, I mean, I know it's stereotypical, but honestly, neither of my parents smoked, neither of my parents drank, and that was just kind of came out of left field just because I got into it. I had a lot of older relatives that they were very old-fashioned. Like there was a Cuba before the revolution that was, I mean, imagine prime times 1940s, 1950s, like this was the dream. This was the time that you wanted to live in Cuba. And that's the generation that they were. And I mean, they were entrepreneurs back there. I mean, they owned a rum company, they owned a tobacco company, they were doing all right for themselves. And they were the type of people that would just very prim and proper, sit down, would always have like their afternoon coffees, and then they would have light dinners, and then smoke outside, and then just, we're never too loud, we're never too any of these different things, but always looked like they were on point. Always made sure that everybody was very respectful. It was the type of thing that even growing up, my mom would tell stories of her grandfather of nobody sat down at the table until the grandfather sat down. And just like hearing those kind of stories and kind of being romanticized into what used to be, that's always been, I've been a big fan of like the gentleman lifestyle and just persona for a long, long time. The Nat King Coles and the Frank Sinatras and the Dean Martins, and that's kind of what gets you into it. And you carry yourself a certain way. And that's of course like how they dress and how that makes you feel. And that made you start being like, okay, well, like what were those people like? Because obviously, I mean, it's not the clothes that make you a gentleman. It's not the clothes that you're like, oh, hey, that's what's going to make it. No, there's more to it. When I first started cigars, I used to be the suit guy. I was always the kid in the suit. I was 19 years old. I had to do something a little bit different because at that time, everybody was like, it was all about the streetwear and how can I be kind of outside the box. And then I was like, oh, I'll be the 100-year-old man in a 19-year-old body. I was like, that's the jam. But then as you start learning about business and different things like that, it's like you can't wear a suit at every meeting that you go to or every time you interact with people. And that's when, just because you might shut off a tie, might shut off a coat, that doesn't mean that you change who you are. That doesn't mean that you change your person as a character. And that was like, I do think that the culture of being around some, like people that were old-fashioned, and I think that Hispanic culture is old-fashioned, for better or for worse. In my case, I think it was for the better. Empathy is the biggest thing. Like people will sometimes ask, what's the one thing that you'd really want to teach your children? Whether it be boy, girl, that doesn't matter. I think that empathy, being able to relate to people, make people feel that you're in it with them, even though you have nothing in your history that you can ever relate to. I think that sometimes people want that. Granted, it'll never be the same as, oh, I've been through it with you, but if you can console somebody, whether it be anything, whether even it's being like that, they have a different political view, if they have a different religious view, it's more to be like, I can empathize that this is how you grew up, this is how you feel, this is that you think that you're right. It's like, that to me is the biggest thing. It doesn't matter what you're wearing at that point. It doesn't matter what you're looking at that point. The biggest thing is just being open to other ideas. That's probably the most gentlemanly thing I can think of because, and as I'm sure everybody in the room and everybody watching can tell, these days it's definitely lost. That people can't have opinions without respecting somebody else's.